Welcome back to Glamour Unfiltered with me, Josh Smith, and today we are joined by one of the most inspiring 19-year-olds on the entire planet. It's Yara Shahidi! Babes, you have been busy.
Just a little.
You've starred in Blackish, you've gone to star in Grownish, you've set up your own initiative called 18x18 to encourage young voters. You've spoken out about gun crime. And on top of all of that, you're now starring in this incredible film, The Sun is Also a Star.
Yeah.
Which is an incredibly inspiring story about Natasha, who goes through New York City on one day and she tries to make sure her family can stay in America and not face deportation. And at the same time, she also picks up a lad.
Yeah,
and I can't even get a text back. How does she do it?
She's quite the multitasker.
She's quite the multitasker.
I think because we are talking about deportation and we're talking about immigration, it was really important to us that it never felt like some aside to a love story, to like a young adult romance.
One of the things that really spoke to me as well is it's a very important message about accepting others and how we also other people at the same time, and how society, we're still very prone to other people who we are unaware of, or we're not educated about.
Right.
And amazingly, like, you have this dual heritage, you're half Iranian, you're half Black American. So can you ever remember a time where you felt segregated against, or have you felt othered?
On a daily basis, there are moments and reminders of not being in mainstream. One thing that made me really relate to the novel and then to the movie was this idea of, like, I know what it's like to come from a country or have family that's from a country that's on the travel ban list. There are so many moments, whether it's my hair, whether it's comments on people preferring it straight, whether it's comments on Iran, whether it's comments on blackness and like what people expect of a black human. A reminder that almost motivates me is knowing that I've barely gone through the worst of it, and knowing that there's so many people who have to endure so much more on a regular basis, and I've been protected by people who've intentionally put me in an inclusive environment, and I think that's what's made me so motivated to be able to speak out not only on behalf of myself, but my entire community.
I think what's so powerful as well about what you're standing for is you're showing people that you can have a voice, and having a voice is such an empowering thing. Because sitting here, I think you're such a confident, incredible human being. And I've watched so many interviews with you where in preparation for this, I'm just like, yes! Everything you say, I'm just like, go for it. But what kind of struggles and what kind of obstacles have you had to overcome to have your own voice and feel empowered about your own voice?
The one thing that I've realized, especially now being a teenager going into being a proper young adult to being an adult, is that I'm much more comfortable sometimes talking about politics than I am standing up for myself. And so there are those moments in which, while I feel completely confident standing up for others, there's some trepidation if it comes down to what I personally want or need. But there are those moments of definitely not feeling as confident as people may initially think. And I think my utter passion for helping people gain equity is what motivates this other thing, but so many times I'm like, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. And so that's something I'm actively working on, because I don't know if you can really truly advocate for others to your best ability if you don't have the ability to advocate for yourself.
What would someone say to you that really grinds your gears?
The adultification of young women, especially young women of color. For example, there was one moment in which I was talking to an editor of a magazine, and this magazine was supposed to represent, like, women in Hollywood, and it was really important to me that there was diversity in who they chose to celebrate. I was like, we're at a particularly wonderful time in television, and although we're not perfect, there are lots of people doing their very best representing people that have never been seen on TV before. So I go and show up, and the three actresses that are there, who are wonderful people, by the way, look like triplets. Like, they have possibly chosen, like, the most kind of homogenous group possible. And I have nothing against those humans as individuals, because they're wonderful actresses who are definitely deserving of their position, but as a magazine, they genuinely felt like nothing was wrong. They genuinely didn't understand what was happening or why this could be a problem or what the implications were of overlooking people who have done incredible shifting work on television and not celebrating that. I was like, it'll be unfair to the communities that I am from for me to be the sole representative of them.
Yes.
It becomes reductive. If I'm the only person at the table, if you have multiple people of one experience and I'm the only person who's representing perpetually, I mean, to your point, representing the other. And so I chose to opt out of the round table. And long story short, the editor of the magazine comes up to me and is asking why. And so she's talking to me as though I'm an adult, but the issue is she's not hearing my response and not respecting it. And so there's that situation of, so you want to have this conversation with me as an adult, but you're not giving me the mutual respect to hear my response of saying I don't want to participate.
I think a lot of people can be very deaf at times to the things that are going around them. Like, as a gay man myself, like living in 21st century London, England, where we're seen as like a very woke generation.
Right.
And people can say really stupid, dismissive things sometimes when they say, oh, homophobia doesn't exist anymore, or racism doesn't exist anymore. And people are so, I mean, this is what this movie raises so well, is that people can be so deaf to other people's experiences and not have their mind open to those things.
Yeah.
So it's so incredible you can sit here and say these things as an empowered 19-year-old.
Thank you.
It's just incredible.
It's really important to me because, you know, I do recognize the particular privilege I have in having this platform and being given opportunities where I get to do work that I absolutely love. It's important that I use this platform to not only advocate for my obvious communities, but my generation at large, because you're absolutely right. And what we know of, especially Generation Z, is I think we take up more identity categories than previous generations.
Yes, 100%.
Which means it's extremely important to advocate for the intersections of you know, I think the conversation around, and I'm constantly educating myself to the best of my ability about things that weren't necessarily initially in my purview, of whether it's being neuroatypical, what does it mean to actually discuss having a disability, and how do you discuss that respectfully?
And this is exactly what we need. This kind of stuff is exactly what we need. And I think also a really amazing thing that this film raises as well is Black beauty and how it's been so marginalized for such a long period of time. And now we're finally living in a time where it's being representative in a more empowering way and it's more available in more mass shops, for instance.
Right.
How has your relationship with beauty changed, do you think? And how have you learned to become at one with your own skin?
I didn't watch much TV, or I didn't watch many movies growing up. I think my parents were very selective and not in a sort of like hyper guarding me kind of way, but just in being intentional about what's placed in front of me and knowing that there are greater implications to only seeing Cinderella. And it wasn't really until I hit the age of like maybe 13 when I was in middle school. That was when jobs started requesting my hair straight, for example, or even simple things like I was on my school's debate team. And you know, I was at a school where the entire debate team were young women of color. And here we are with completely different hair textures, completely different ethnicities, but we're all straightening our hair before the debate. Partially because we just thought it was more professional than the hair that we were born with. But that was also what we were kind of told and what was assumed. Was like, if you want to be taken seriously, this is how you look. And even starting Blackish, I mean, it's an incredibly supportive environment, but to be 13 and to have makeup on for HD cameras and lights, there was a moment in time where I went from not really caring if I had lip gloss on or not, or only really doing makeup when I felt like it was fun, to feeling like it's what I needed to look ready. I think I'm at a much more comfortable place now, where I feel free to explore, and there are definitely times in which I'm insecure, whether it's just about like, we're in an industry where I spend, like, to be honest, a lot of time looking at myself. You know, like
It's just such a weird experience, which people don't realize.
And I think it breeds unintentional, just self-centric behavior. Oftentimes you hear like, oh, Hollywood, they're so self-absorbed, this or that. That hasn't been my experience. I've met so many giving people, but I think just like there are symptoms to like literally staring at yourself in the mirror, or literally seeing articles about whether people did or didn't like your outfit, did or didn't like your face one day. And so those are definitely things that I work through on a daily basis, but I have a much stronger foundation. We are, like you said, at a better time in which we are seeing more people be very intentional about representing, especially Blackness in particular, knowing that it's not monolithic. I am not the sole representative. You know, we span so many beautiful shades, we span so many different identities and cultures and experiences. There are so many new representations, and I'm really grateful to have that, because I think it serves as a re-education for some, and there are going to be some where this is the world that they're born into.